There was no big ceremony. No processing in, or reprocessing. Just Morgan's words, and then the room darkened a little as a guy in the corridor took up station in front of the door and blocked the light coming through the reeded glass panel. Reacher saw him, all sliced up vertically, a tall, broad-shouldered sentry, standing easy, facing away. Morgan said, "I'm required to tell you there's an appeals procedure. You'll be given full access to it. You'll be given a lawyer." Reacher said, "I'll be given. It's a matter of simple logic. You'll be trying to appeal your way out. Which implies you're starting out in. Which means you'll get what the Army chooses to give you. But I imagine we'll be reasonable. I don't remember any Juan Rodriguez. You'll be given a lawyer for that, too. What's supposed to have happened to the guy?" "You tell me," Morgan said. "I can't. I don't remember him. You left him with a brain injury. It caught up with him eventually. Who was he?" "Denial won't work forever. I'm not denying anything. I'm telling you I don't remember the guy. That's a discussion you can have with your lawyer." "And who is Candace Dayton?" "Likewise. But a different lawyer." "Why different?" "Different type of case." "Am I under arrest?" "No," Morgan said. "Not yet. The prosecutors will make that decision in their own good time. But until then you're under orders, as of 2 minutes ago. You'll retain your former rank for the time being. Administratively you're assigned to this unit, and your orders are to treat this building as your duty station and appear here every morning before 0800 hours. You are not to leave the area. The area is defined as a 5-mile radius of this desk. You'll be quartered in a place of the Army's choosing." Reacher said nothing. Morgan said, "Are there any questions, Major? Will I be required to wear a uniform?" "Not at this stage." "That's a relief. This is not a joke, Reacher. The potential downside here is considerable. For you, personally, I mean, the worst case would be life in Leavenworth, for a homicide conviction. But more likely 10 years for manslaughter, given the 16-year gap. And the best case is not very attractive either, given that we would have to look at the original crime. I would plan on conduct unbecoming, at the minimum, with a new discharge, this time without honor. But your lawyer will run it down for you. When the relevant department has already been notified. There were no cells in the old building. No secure facilities. There never had been. Just offices. Reacher was left where he was, in the visitor chair, not looked at, not spoken to. Completely ignored. The sentry stood easy on the other side of the door. Morgan started tapping and typing and scrolling on the laptop computer. Reacher searched his memory for Juan Rodriguez. 16 years ago he had been 12 months into his command of the 110th. Early days. The name Rodriguez sounded Hispanic. Reacher had known many Hispanic people, both inside the service and out. He remembered hitting people on occasion, inside the service and out, some of them Hispanic, but none of them named Rodriguez. And if Rodriguez had been of interest to the 110th, he would have remembered the name, surely, especially from so early, when every case was significant. The 110th had been an experimental venture. Every move was watched. Every result was evaluated. Every misstep had an autopsy. He asked, what was the alleged context? No answer from Morgan. The guy just kept on tapping and typing and scrolling. So, Reacher searched his memory for a woman named Candace Dayton. Again, he had known many women, both inside the service and out. Candace was a fairly common name, as was Dayton, comparatively, but the two names together meant nothing special to him. Neither did the diminutive, Candy. Candy Dayton, Candace Dayton, nothing. Not that he remembered everything. No one remembered everything. He asked, was Candace Dayton connected to Juan Rodriguez in some way? Morgan looked up, as if surprised to see he had a visitor sitting in his office. As if he had forgotten. He didn't answer the question. He just picked up one of his complicated telephones and ordered a car. He told Reacher to go wait with the sergeant downstairs. 2 miles away, the man whom only 3 people in the world knew as Romeo took out his cell, and dialed the man only 2 people in the world knew as Juliet, and said, "He's been recalled to service." Colonel Morgan just put it in the computer. Juliet said, "So what happens next?" "Too early to tell. Will he run?" "A sane man would." "Where are they putting him?" "Their usual motel, I expect." The sergeant at the desk downstairs didn't say anything. She was as tongue-tied as before. Reacher leaned on the wall and passed the time in silence. 10 minutes later a private first class came in from the cold and saluted and asked Reacher to follow him. Formal and polite, innocent until proven guilty, Reacher guessed, at least in some people's eyes. Out in the lot there was a worn army sedan with its motor running. A young lieutenant was stumping around next to it, awkward and embarrassed. He held the rear door and Reacher got in the back. The lieutenant took the front passenger seat and the private drove. A mile later they arrived at a motel, a run-down swaybacked old heap in a dark lot on a suburban evening quiet 3-lane road. The lieutenant signed a paper, and the night clerk gave Reacher a key, and the private drove the lieutenant away. And then the second car arrived, with the guys in the t-shirts and the athletic pants. 5. There were no pockets in the athletic pants, and none in the t-shirts, either. And neither man was wearing dog tags. No ID at all. Their car was clean, too. Nothing in it, except the usual army document package stowed neatly in the glove compartment. No weapons, no personal property, no hidden wallets, no scraps of paper, no gas receipts. The license plate was a standard government registration. Nothing abnormal about the car at all, except the 2 new dents in the doors. The left-hand guy was blocking the driver's door. Reacher dragged him 6 feet along the blacktop. He offered no resistance. Life was not a television show. Hit a guy hard enough in the side of the head, and he didn't spring back up ready to carry on the fight. He stayed down for an hour or more, all sick and dizzy and disoriented. A lesson learned long ago. The human brain was much more sensitive to side-to-side displacement than front-to-back. An evolutionary quirk, presumably, like most things. Reacher opened the driver's door and climbed inside the car. The motor was stopped, but the key was still in. Reacher racked the seat back and started the engine. He sat still for a long spell and stared ahead through the windshield. They couldn't find you before. They won't find you now. The army doesn't use skip tracers. And no skip tracer could find you. Anyway, not the way you seem to live. He adjusted the mirror. He put his foot on the brake and fumbled the lever into gear. Conduct unbecoming, at the minimum, with a new discharge, this time without honor. He took his foot off the brake and drove away. He drove straight back to the old HQ building, and parked 50 yards from it on the 3-lane road. The car was warm, and he kept the motor running to keep it warm. He watched through the windshield and saw no activity ahead. No coming or going. In his day the 110th had worked around the clock, 7 days a week, and he saw no reason why anything would have changed. The enlisted night watch would be in for the duration, and a night duty officer would be in place, and the other officers would go off duty as soon as their work was done, whenever that might be. Normally. But not on that particular night. Not during a mess or a crisis, and definitely not with a troubleshooter in the house. No one would leave before Morgan. Basic army politics. Morgan left an hour later. Reacher saw him quite clearly. A plain sedan came out through the gate and turned on to the 3-lane and drove straight past where Reacher was parked. In the darkness Reacher saw a flash of Morgan at the wheel, in his ACU pajamas and his eyeglasses, his hair still neatly combed, looking straight ahead, both hands on the wheel. Like someone's griotant on the way to the store. Reacher watched in the mirror and saw his tail lights disappear over the hill. He waited. And sure enough, within the next quarter hour there was a regular exodus. 5 more Cars came out. 2 of them turning left, 3 of them turning right, 4 of them driven solo. 1 of them with 3 people aboard. All the cars were dewed over with night mist. And all of them were trailing cold white exhaust. They disappeared into the distance, left and right, and their exhaust drifted away, and the world went quiet again. Reacher waited 10 more minutes, just in case. But nothing more happened. 50 yards away the old building looked settled and silent. The night watch, in a world of its own. Reacher put his car in gear and rolled slowly down the hill and turned in at the gate. A new sentry was on duty in the hutch. A young guy, blank and stoic. Reacher stopped and buzzed his window down, and the kid said, "Sir." Reacher gave his name and said, "I'm reporting to my duty station as ordered." "Sir." The guy said again. "Am I on your list?" The guy checked. "Yes, sir," he said. "Major Reacher. But for tomorrow morning. I was ordered to report before 0800 hours." "Yes, sir. I see that. But it's 2300 hours now, sir. In the evening. Which is before 0800 in the morning." "As ordered." The guy didn't speak. Reacher said, "It's a simple matter of chronology. I'm keen to get to work, therefore a little early." No answer. "You could check with Colonel Morgan, if you like. I'm sure he's back at his billet by now." No answer. "Or you could check with your duty sergeant." "Yes, sir," the kid said. "I'll do that instead." He made the call, and listened for a second, and put the phone down and said, "Sir, the sergeant requests that you stop by the desk." "I'll be sure to do that, soldier," Reacher said. He drove on, and parked next to the little red 2-seater, which was still there, exactly where it had been before. He got out and locked up and walked through the cold to the door. The lobby felt quiet and still. A night and day difference, literally. But the same sergeant was at the reception desk, finishing her work before going off duty. She was on a high stool, typing on a keyboard, updating the day's log, presumably. Record keeping was a big deal, all over the military. She stopped and looked up. Reacher asked her, "Are you putting this visit in the official record?" She said, "What visit?" And I told the private at the gate not to, either. Not tongue-tied anymore. Not with the interloper Morgan out of the house. She looked young, but infinitely capable, like sergeants the world over. The tape over her right breast said her name was Leach. She said, "I know who you are." Reacher said, "Have we met?" "No, sir, but you're a famous name here. You were this unit's first commander." "Do you know why I'm back?" "Yes, sir. We were told." "What was the general reaction?" "Mixed." "What's your personal reaction?" "I'm sure there's a good explanation. And 16 years is a long time. Which makes it political, probably. Which is usually bullshit. And even if it isn't, I'm sure the guy deserved it, or worse." Reacher said nothing. Leach said, "I thought about warning you when you first came in. Best thing for you would have been just to run for it. So I really wanted to turn you around and get you out of here. But I was under orders not to." "I'm sorry." Reacher asked her, "Where is Major Turner?" Leach said, "Long story." "How does it go?" "She deployed to Afghanistan." "When?" "The middle of the day, yesterday." "Why?" "We have people there. There was an issue." "What kind of an issue?" "I don't know. And she never arrived." "You know that for sure?" "No question." "So where is she instead?" "No one knows." "When did Colonel Morgan get here?" "Within hours of Major Turner leaving." "How many hours?" "About 2. "Did he give a reason for being here?" The implication was Major Turner had been relieved of her command. "Nothing specific." "Nothing at all." "Was she screwing up?" Leach didn't answer. Reacher said, "You may speak freely, Sergeant." "No, sir, she wasn't screwing up. She was doing a really good job." "So that's all you've got? Implications and disappearances?" "So far." "No gossip?" Reacher asked. Sergeants were always part of a network. Always had been, always would be. Like rumor mills. Like uniformed versions of tabloid Newspapers. Leach said. I heard one little thing. Which was, it might be nothing, but, and it might not be connected. But, someone told me the guardhouse at Fort Dyer has a new prisoner. 6. Fort Dyer was an army base very close to the Pentagon. But Leach told Reacher that 8 years after he mustered out a cost-cutting exercise had merged it with the Marine Corps. Nearby Helsington House, the newly enlarged establishment had been given the logical if clumsy name of Joint Base Dyer Helsington House. In Reacher's day both Dyer and Helsington House had been high-status places in their own right, staffed mostly by senior and very important people, with the result that the Dyer PX had looked more like Saks Fifth Avenue than a Walmart, and he had heard the Marine store was even better. Therefore the new blended version was likely to be no lower on the social totem pole. Therefore its cells were likely to house only high-status prisoners. No drunken brawlers or petty thieves there. An MP major with a problem would be a typical tenant. Therefore, Leach's rumor might be right. The Dyer guardhouse was located north and west of the Pentagon, diagonally across the cemetery, less than 5 miles from the 110th HQ. Much less. The Army and the Jarheads in the same place. Reacher said. How's that working out for them? Politicians will do anything to save a buck, Leach said. Can you call ahead for me? You going there now? I have nothing better to do at the moment. Do you have a vehicle? Temporarily, Reacher said. The night was quiet and dark and suburban, and the drive to Dyer took less than 10 minutes. Getting into the joint base itself took much longer. The merger had happened less than 4 years after 9/11, and whatever cost-cutting money had been saved hadn't been saved on security. The main gate was on the south side of the complex, and it was impressive. There were concrete dragon's teeth everywhere, funneling traffic through a narrowing lane blocked by 3 consecutive guard shacks. Reacher was in battered civilian clothes and had no military ID. No ID at all, in fact, except a worn and creased U.S. passport that was already long expired. But he was in a government car, which created a good first impression. And the military had computers, and he showed up as on active service as of the middle of that evening. And the Army had sergeants, and Leach had lit up the favor network with a blizzard of calls. And Dyer had a criminal investigation office, and to Reacher's mild surprise there were still guys around who knew guys who remembered his name. The upshot was that just 45 minutes after stopping at the first barrier he was face to face with an MP captain in the guardhouse front office. The captain was a serious dark guy of about 30, and his ACU nametape said his name was Weiss. He looked honest and decent and reasonably friendly, so Reacher said. This is just a personal matter, Captain. Not even remotely official, and I'm probably a little toxic right now, so you should proceed with extreme caution. You should keep this visit off the record, or refuse to talk to me altogether. Weiss said. Toxic how? Looks like something I did 16 years ago has come back to bite me in the ass. What did you do? I don't remember. No doubt someone will remind me soon enough. The computer says you were just recalled. Correct. I never heard of that before. Me neither. Doesn't sound good. Like someone really wanted you back in the jurisdiction. Reacher nodded. That's how I took it. Like I was being extradited out of civilian life to face the music. But it was a much simpler procedure. There was no kind of a hearing. You think they're serious? Feels that way at the moment. What do you need from me? I'm looking for Major Susan Turner of the 110th MP. Why? Like I said, it's personal. Connected with your problem. Number. Not in any way. But you were with the 110th, right? A long time before Major Turner got anywhere near it. So you're not subverting testimony or coaching a witness? Absolutely not. This is a different matter entirely. Are you a friend of hers? I was hoping that might be a future development. Or not, depending on what I think of her when I meet her. You haven't met her yet. Is she here? Weiss said. In a cell. Since yesterday afternoon. What's the charge? She took a bribe. From who? I don't know. For what? I don't know. How much of a bribe? I'm just a jailer, Weiss said. You know how it is. They don't give me chapter and verse. Can I see her? Visiting hours are over. How many guests have you got tonight? Just her. So you're not busy. And we're off the record, right? So no one will know. Weiss opened up a green 3-ring binder. Notes, procedures, standing orders, some of them printed, some of them handwritten. He said, she seems to have been expecting you. She passed on a request through her lawyer. She mentioned you by name. What's the request? It's more of an instruction, really. Saying what? She doesn't want to see you. Reacher said nothing. Weiss looked down at the 3-ring binder and said, quote, per the accused's explicit request, under no circumstances is Major Jack Reacher, U.S. Army, retired, former commander of the 110th MP, to be granted visitation privileges. 7. Getting out of the joint base was only marginally quicker than getting in. Each of the 3 guard shacks checked ID and conducted a trunk search to make sure Reacher was who he said he was, and hadn't stolen anything. Then, after clearing the last of the barriers, he threaded his way along the same route the local bus had taken. But he stopped early and pulled in at the curb. There were plenty of highway ramps all around. There was I-395, spearing south and west. There was the George Washington Memorial Parkway, heading north and west. There was I-66, heading due west. There was I-395 going east, if he wanted it. All of them quiet and flowing fast. There was a big country out there. There was I-95, all the way up and down the eastern seaboard, and the west coast, 5 days away, and the vast interior, empty and lonely. They couldn't find you before. They won't find you now. A new discharge, this time without honor. She doesn't want to see you. Reacher moved off the curb and drove back to the motel. The 2 guys with the t-shirts were gone. Evidently they had gotten up and staggered off somewhere. Reacher left their car on the curb 200 yards away. He left the key in the ignition and the doors unlocked. Either it would be stolen by a couple of punks, or the 2 guys would come back to get it. He really didn't care which. He walked the last of the distance and let himself into his dismal room. He had been right. The shower was weak and strangled, and the towels were thin, and the soap was small, and the shampoo was cheap. But he cleaned up as well as he could, and then he went to bed. The mattress felt like a sack stuffed with balled-up plastic, and the sheets felt damp with disuse. But he fell asleep just fine. He set the alarm in his head for 7, and he breathed in, and he breathed out, and that was it. Romeo dialed Juliet again and said, he just tried to make contact with Turner over at Dyer, and failed, of course. Juliet said, our boys must have missed him at the motel. Nothing to worry about. I hope not. Good night. Yes, you too. Reacher didn't make it to 7 o'clock. He was woken at 6, by a brisk tap at the door. It sounded businesslike, not threatening. Tap, tap, tappity tap. 6 o'clock in the morning. And someone was already cheerful. He slid out of bed and hauled his pants out from under the mattress and put them on. The air in the room was sharp with cold. He could see his breath. The heater had been off all night. He padded barefoot across the sticky carpet and opened the door. A gloved hand that had been ready to tap again was pulled back quickly. The hand was attached to an arm, which was attached to a body, which was in a Class A Army uniform, with JAG Corps insignia all over it. A lawyer. A woman lawyer. According to the plate on the right side of her tunic, her name was Sullivan. She was wearing the uniform like a business suit. She had a briefcase in her non-tapping hand. She didn't say anything. She wasn't particularly short, but her eye line was level with Reacher's shirtless chest, where there was an old .38 bullet wound, which seemed to preoccupy her. Reacher said, Yes, her car was behind her, a dark green domestic sedan. The sky was still black. She said, Major Reacher. She was in her mid-30s, Reacher guessed, a major herself, with short dark hair and eyes that were neither warm nor cold. He said, how can I help you? It's supposed to be the other way around. You've been assigned to represent me. For my sins. For the recall appeal or the Juan Rodriguez thing or the Candace Dayton thing. Forget the recall appeal. You'll get 5 minutes in front of a panel about a month from now, but you won't win. That never happens. So Rodriguez or Dayton? Rodriguez, Sullivan said. We need to get right to it. But she didn't move. Her gaze traced its way downward, to his waist, where there was another scar, by that point more than a quarter-century old, a big ugly white starfish overlaid by crude stitches, cut through by a knife wound, which was much more recent, but still old. I know, he said. Aesthetically I'm a mess. But come in anyway. She said, no, I think I'll wait in the car. We'll talk over breakfast. Where? There's a diner 2 blocks away. You paying? For myself. Not for you. 2 blocks away. You could have brought coffee. Could have, but didn't. Some big help you're going to be. Give me 11 minutes. 11. That's how long it takes me to get ready in the morning. Most people would say 10. Then either they're faster than me or imprecise. He closed the door on her and padded back to the bed and took his pants off again. They looked okay. Laying them out under the mattress was as close as he ever got to ironing. He walked on to the bathroom and set the shower running. He cleaned his teeth and climbed under the weak lukewarm stream and used what was left of the soap and shampoo. He dried himself with damp towels and dressed and stepped out to the lot. 11 minutes, dead on. He was a creature of habit. Major Sullivan had turned her car around. It was a Ford, the same model as the silver item that had driven him across Missouri many days before. He opened the passenger door and climbed in. Sullivan sat up straight and put the car in gear and eased out of the lot. Slow and cautious. Her uniform skirt was at her knee. She was wearing dark nylons and plain black lace-up shoes. Reacher asked, what's your name? Sullivan said, you can read, I presume. First name, I mean. Does it matter? You're going to call me Major Sullivan. She said it in a way that was neither friendly nor unfriendly, nor unexpected. A personal relationship was not on the agenda. Army defense lawyers were diligent, intelligent and professional, but they were on nobody's side but the Army's. The diner was indeed 2 blocks away, but the blocks were long. A left, and then a right, and then a ragged strip mall, on the shoulder of another 3-lane road. The mall featured a hardware store, and a no-name pharmacy, and a picture-framing shop, and a gun store, and a walk-in dentist. The diner stood alone at the end of the strip, in its own lot. It was a white stucco affair with the kind of inside decor that made Reacher bet the owner was Greek and there would be a million items on the menu. Which made it a restaurant, in his opinion, not a diner. Diners were lean, mean, stripped-down places, as ruthless as combat rifles. They took a booth in a side wing, and a waitress brought coffee before being asked, which raised Reacher's opinion of the place a little. The menu was a multi-page laminated thing almost as big as the tabletop. Reacher saw pancakes and eggs on page 2, and investigated no further. Sullivan said, I'm recommending a plea bargain. They'll ask for 5 years and we'll offer 1 and settle on 2. You can do that. 2 years won't kill you. Reacher said, who was Candace Dayton? Not my case. Someone else will talk to you about that. And who was Juan Rodriguez exactly? Someone you hit in the head who died from his injuries. I don't remember him. That's not the best thing to say in a case like this. It makes it sound like you hit so many people in the head that you can't distinguish one from the other. It might prompt further inquiries. Someone might be tempted to draw up a list. And from what I hear it might be a very long list. The 110th was pretty much a rogue operation back then. And what is it now? A little better, perhaps. But far from outstanding. That's your opinion. That's my experience. Do you know anything about Susan Turner's situation? I know her lawyer. And she took a bribe. Do we know that for sure? There's enough electronic data to float a battleship. She opened a bank account in the Cayman Islands at 10 o'clock in the morning the day before yesterday, and at 11 o'clock, $100,000 showed up in it, and then she was arrested at 12 o'clock, more or less red-handed. Seems fairly open and shut to me. And fairly typical of the 110th. Sounds like you don't love my old unit, overall. Which might be a problem. Because I'm entitled to a competent defense. Sixth Amendment, and so on. Do you think you're the right person for the job? I'm what they're giving you, so get used to it. I should see the evidence against me, at least. Don't you think? Isn't there something in the Sixth Amendment about that too? You didn't do much paperwork 16 years ago. We did some. I know, Sullivan said. I've seen what there is of it. Among other things you did daily summaries. I have one that shows you heading out for an interview with Mr. Rodriguez. Then I have a document from a county hospital showing his admission later the same day, for a head injury, among other things. And that's it. Where's the connection? He could have fallen down the stairs after I left. He could have been hit by a truck. The doctors thought he had been. That's a weak case, Reacher said. In fact, it's not really a case at all. I don't remember anything about it. Yet you remember some stairs that Mr. Rodriguez might have fallen down after your interview. Speculation, Reacher said. Hypothesis. Figure of speech. Same as the truck. They've got nothing. They have an affidavit, Sullivan said. Sworn out by Mr. Rodriguez himself, some time later. He names you as his attacker.